Tanya Brooks had $312 in her checking account, a pediatric cardiologist's appointment in 9 days, and a surgery estimate of $94,000 sitting in a folder on her kitchen table that she had not been able to open for 3 weeks. She had applied to Family Feud in January, not because she believed she would win enough to matter, but because the application had been something to do on the night she could not sleep, which was most nights, and because doing something, anything, felt marginally more survivable than lying still while the number $94,000 sat in a closed folder in her kitchen and her son Marcus, 7 years old, slept in the next room with a heart that beat imperfectly in a way that no 7-year-old should have to carry. She had told no one on the show about Marcus's condition. She had told the casting team she was a single mother who loved trivia and wanted to win money for her family. Both of those things were true. The third thing, the folder, the $94,000, the 9 days, she had kept to herself, the way she kept most things, because she was a woman who had learned that asking for help produced mostly the sound of people explaining why they couldn't. What she did not know when she walked into ImageWorks Studios in Atlanta on a Tuesday in April was that a stage manager had read the background notes the casting team had compiled, and that those notes included a medical history she had mentioned in passing during her 3rd interview, and that those notes had been placed on Steve Harvey's desk the morning of the taping, and that Steve Harvey had read them at 7 in the morning and had made 3 phone calls before 9. It was a Tuesday in April, and the studio was running its 2nd taping of the day. Tanya had come with her mother Gloria, her brother Dennis, her best friend Cheryl, and Cheryl's husband Anthony. They were a team assembled on the basis of speed and competitive instinct. Dennis had won his church's trivia league 2 years running. Cheryl was a crossword devotee. Gloria had an encyclopedic knowledge of popular culture that stopped precisely at 1987 and was extremely accurate up to that point. Tanya had not told any of them about the folder. She had told Gloria that Marcus had a heart condition that was being monitored. Gloria had accepted this because Tanya used a voice when she did not want follow-up questions that Gloria had learned to recognize and respect over 37 years. Marcus's condition had been diagnosed at 18 months, a congenital septal defect, a hole in the wall between the chambers of his heart that had been caught during a routine well-child exam, and had been the subject of every significant decision Tanya had made in the 6 years since. The first cardiologist had said watchful waiting. The second cardiologist, consulted at Marcus's 5th birthday, had said the defect was not closing on its own and would require surgical repair. The third cardiologist, brought in for a second opinion that Tanya had waited 4 months for an appointment to obtain, had confirmed the recommendation and provided the estimate, $94,000 after her insurance maximum out of pocket, which her plan had already reached from a hospitalization in February. She had appealed the insurance determination 3 times. The first appeal was denied in 11 days. Not medically necessary at this time. She had submitted a letter from the cardiologist. The second appeal was denied in 19 days, alternative treatment options not yet exhausted. She had submitted 2 additional physician statements. The third appeal was denied in 8 days with language that her patient advocate described as boilerplate and her attorney described as a clear case of bad faith claims handling, and that her insurance company described, in a letter, as final. She had applied for 3 medical financial assistance programs. One had a 6-month waiting list. One had an income ceiling she was $400 above. One had ceased accepting applications in January due to depleted funding. Marcus had asked her, 2 weeks before the taping, why she looked at her phone so much at night. She had said, "Mama's just keeping up with things." He had said, "Is everything okay?" She had said, "Everything is fine, baby," he had said. "You can tell me if it's not." He was 7 years old. She had held it together until he was asleep. Nobody in that studio knew what $94,000 felt like to carry alone. The game had been extraordinary. The Brooks team was fast and coordinated, and Tanya had been playing with the focused intensity of a woman for whom this was not a game. She had landed the top answer in the second round with a precision that made the audience gasp. She had buzzed in on 4 consecutive questions and gotten 3 of them in the top 2. The studio had warmed to her immediately. There was something in how she played that read, without anyone being able to articulate why, like a person with a reason. Between rounds 2 and 3, Steve Harvey walked toward the Brooks family's podium, not to the center of the stage, directly to Tanya. He said, quietly but not privately, "Tanya, can I ask you something?" She said yes. He said, "Your son Marcus, how is he?" The blood left Tanya's face in real time. She said, "How do you know about Marcus?" Steve said, "Because I read everything before I walk out here. That's how I do my job." He paused. "How is he?" Tanya Brooks, who had been holding $94,000 in 9 days and 3 denied appeals, and a 7-year-old who asked her if everything was okay, she said, in a voice that was very controlled and very close to the edge of control, "He needs surgery. I'm trying to get it done." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey did not speak immediately. He stood in front of Tanya for a moment with the full weight of what she had just said. Then, he said, "You came here to win money for his surgery." It was not a question. Tanya said, "Yes," Steve said. "Does he know that?" She said, "No." Steve nodded. He was quiet again. Then he said, "I want to tell you something. I want the whole room to hear it." He turned to the audience. "This woman drove here today. She drove here today, with a surgery estimate in a folder she hasn't been able to open in 3 weeks. And she played 2 rounds of Family Feud better than almost anyone I've seen this season, because she is playing for her son. And her son is 7 years old and has a heart condition, and asked her last week if everything was okay." The audience did not make a sound. Steve Harvey pressed his handkerchief to his face. He stepped back. He took a breath. He said, "We're not going to finish the game right now. We're going to do something else." He pulled out his phone. He called his personal foundation director. On the Family Feud stage, in front of 300 people and the full camera setup, he authorized an immediate contribution of $94,000 from his personal foundation to cover Marcus Brooks's surgical costs in full. He said the words slowly and clearly. He repeated the amount. He said, "This is not contingent on anything. This is not a loan. This is for Marcus." He looked at Tanya. "Your son is getting his surgery." Tanya Brooks made a sound that was not words. She put both hands over her mouth, and she sat down, not on a chair. There was no chair. She sat down on the stage floor, in the middle of the Family Feud set, in the way that people sit down when their legs have simply finished with the project of standing. Steve Harvey sat down next to her. On the floor. 2 people sitting on the floor of a game show stage, one of them unable to speak, one of them not requiring her to. He was not done. He called the pediatric cardiologist's office next. He asked to speak with the scheduling coordinator. He said he was calling on behalf of a patient named Marcus Brooks, and that cost was no longer a barrier, and he wanted the surgery scheduled at the earliest available date. The coordinator said the first opening was in 3 weeks. Steve said, "Is there anything sooner if I call the department head directly?" The coordinator paused. She said she would transfer him. The department head answered. The surgery was scheduled for 9 days out. the same 9 days Tanya had been counting from the moment the third appeal was denied. Steve turned to Tanya. He said, 9 days. Same 9 days. Just a different outcome. He announced that both families would receive the full day's prize. He looked at the competing family, the Nguyen's from Savannah, and said, "Thank you for being in this room today." Their matriarch said, "We're praying for Marcus." She had not met him. She prayed anyway. The episode aired 7 weeks later. The clip of Steve Harvey and Tanya Brooks sitting on the floor of the Family Feud stage reached 350 million views in 13 days. The hashtag for Marcus was used in 44 countries. The American Heart Association cited the clip in their annual fundraising campaign. 3 pediatric cardiac care programs received combined donations of $4.2 million in the 6 weeks following the episode's broadcast, attributed directly to viewer response. Marcus Brooks had his surgery 9 days after the taping. He was in the operating room for 4 hours and 20 minutes. He came out of anesthesia asking for orange Jell-O. The surgeon told Tanya the repair was complete, and the defect was closed, and that Marcus's heart would beat correctly for the rest of his life. Tanya went to the hospital chapel and stayed there for 20 minutes. She said afterward that she had not prayed during that time. She had just sat. Some things require witness, not words. 3 months after the surgery, Marcus Brooks had been cleared for full activity. He had joined a youth soccer league. His first game was on a Saturday morning, and his grandmother Gloria was in the front row. And his uncle Dennis had made a sign that said Marcus #7 in letters large enough to be seen from the parking lot. Tanya stood on the sideline and watched her son run, and his heart beat correctly. And the morning was ordinary in the specific way that ordinary becomes precious when you have spent enough time in the other kind. A year after the taping, Tanya Brooks had paid off her medical debt from Marcus's February hospitalization, the one that had depleted her insurance maximum. She had started a savings account for Marcus's college. She had also started speaking at local community events about navigating the health insurance appeals process. A 30-minute presentation she gave for free at libraries and community centers and church basements because nobody had helped her navigate it, and she wanted to be the person she had needed. She had opened the folder, the one with the $94,000 estimate. She had opened it the day after the taping, folded it in half, and placed it in a shoebox she kept on the top shelf of her closet. She kept it as a reminder, not of how close it had been, of what it had felt like to not be alone in it. If this story about a mother who drove to Atlanta to win money for her son's heart, and the man who made sure she didn't have to win it alone, moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to know that there are still people in this world who show up. Have you ever received help exactly when you needed it most? Let us know in the comments, and ring that notification bell for more moments that restore your faith in what people are capable of when they choose to pay attention.